With the one, the perfection of love, harmony, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the Master, the spirit of guidance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. in, in, illallah, 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 Allah. So for a few breaths, remain centered in the heart. And as though the center of your chest has an additional set of nostrils. Breathe in and out of the center of your chest, or whatever point between your top and bottom of your breastbone feels more open or more alive, or that draws your attention. Imagine those nostrils there. Breathe in and out of that location, thinking who on the inhale, who on the exhale. And this doesn't have to be a deeper or longer breath than you usually take. All that's necessary is that you be present to it. And I'll say that anyone can do the practices, the last two practices that we did, reaching as far above your right shoulder as you can extend your consciousness into the cosmos, and bringing, saying along without a break, switching into woo and bringing all that vastness down into the physical heart. And then saying whoo and breathing whoo into the heart. Finding a place at the deepest depth of that continuum between the cosmos and the depth of your own heart, and just breathing whoo into it. And then if you wish, just breathing whoo in and out of the heart silently. And those first two stages that we did with the La ilaha, La ilaha illallah, and then La ilaha illallah, whoo, and illallah, whoo, should be received from a Sufi guide, because they can destabilize us, and not in a good way. So, going back to breathing whoo in and out of the heart. And be alert to whatever shifts you might experience in the way your physical body feels. The goal is not to make anything happen, but simply to be present to what is happening, and to be present to any shifts that occur in conjunction with doing a spiritual practice of some kind. So continue with that. And these are the words of Hazrat Murshid Inayat Khan in his discourses, specifically on different points related to meditation. So he says, in meditation, the control over mind is exerted through breath and mind. The breath is kept rhythmical and refined, and it becomes even more refined as the consciousness is turned upon it and the light of one's inner being manifests thereon. If the breath is not kept in rhythm, thoughts will enter, and this battle against thought, especially against ego thought, is the battle that every saint and sage has to combat continually. For this, also willpower is needed. So in Sufism, the student is given a symbolical concentration in order to strengthen the willpower, so that not only will this power manifest, but it can be used to control one's lower nature. When the breath is kept in rhythm and is refined, the magnetism, which is ordinarily consumed in the activities of mind and body, is preserved. In whatever we do and in all our thinking and imagining, we consume energy. This consumption of energy brings on old age and weakness. Contrariwise, it may be that meditation of itself may cure all one's evils, whatever they may be. For all arise out of nafs, and meditation is the best means to control the nafs. When one does that, the magnetism, which is ordinarily wasted or consumed, is absorbed into one's personal atmosphere. This makes of one a battery of life. It is this battery which is used by teachers and healers and all mystics. It is the same energy which is mentioned in the prayer Nayaz, that it comes to one's thought through the rays of the sun and the waves of the air and the all-pervading power of space. Through breathing, the energy which is conveyed on the air enters the personality through the breath. By silence and by stilling the mind, one draws upon the endless resources of space. This atmosphere is a veritable alchemy, and the knowledge of it is the secret of the adept. There is some benefit when meditation is performed constantly in one place, whether one has devotions in a room alone or in a hall or chamber where many gather together. Such a place offers the right accommodation for the highest and finest vibrations and establishes an atmosphere of stillness. This makes it easier for others who come to such a place. The saints are often called upon to preserve the stillness of holy places. The teacher can, by presence, make the accommodation for still finer vibrations. So there is at least one advantage to have a teacher who is more than a leader, who can elevate the feeling of a room. Yet the faith of people, their prayers, and their attitude also help to strengthen the atmosphere of a chapel, a hall, or a temple. All things that lead away from self lead to God. In meditation, the control over mind is exerted through breath and mind. The breath is kept rhythmical and refined, and it becomes ever more refined as the consciousness is turned upon it, and the light of one's inner being manifests thereon. So this needs a little bit of unpacking. Whenever he refers to breath, as I've said at other times, he's not just speaking about the gas that we squish in and out. He's speaking about this twin movement of consciousness and life force, which moves on the tempo of the physical breath, but also underlies and continually revivifies and reanimates the breath of the body. And so what he's talking about when he talks about the breath being refined or rhythmical, he's actually talking about nervous system regulation. And there's this very fine, even, rhythmical movement, which body therapists call pendulation. It's this very smooth, very fluid movement between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous systems. The sympathetic nervous system being that which energizes. It's the fight and flight of an emergency response. It also serves to rouse the body from rest or quiescence. The freeze part of fight, flight, freeze is the parasympathetic, which also, when it's not stressed, serves to mediate, modulate, soften the sympathetic response. And so that's when the breath is fine and rhythmical, there's this very fluid movement, cooperation, interweaving of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. If the breath is not kept in rhythm, thoughts will enter, and this battle against thought, especially against ego thought, is the battle that every saint and sage has to combat continually. So in the process of letting the breath become refined and rhythmical, and the nervous system finding regulation, there are all of these things in life continually pulling upon us and asking a response, mostly in this culture, of the sympathetic nervous system. There's all this stuff that is agitating, that is angering, that is fearful, frightening. And so there's this process that sometimes takes quite a while of deepening the concentration so that those arbitrary thoughts, which sometimes honestly do not belong to us, they're put there by media, they're put there by the people with, they're put there by our history, things that we haven't resolved. And sometimes they just seep in from the collective. So it's unwise to assume that every thought and feeling that we have actually originates with us. Some of us, due to the families that we grew up in, have minds that are like psychic link traps. And we need to be on guard that we don't pick up things that do not properly belong to us. For this also willpower is needed. So in Sufism, the student is given a symbolical concentration in order to strengthen the willpower so that not only will this power manifest, but it can be used to control one's lower nature. I'm going to make some commentary on this because that's not really a construction that is useful. So part of the lesson at this moment is we're Sufis. We're not supposed to anything. And that includes blindly accepting everything that the teacher says because the teacher says it. Now, when I was initiated, my initiator enjoined upon me to test everything in the teachings and don't accept anything on faith. And that's one of the places that an esoteric path diverges from conventional religion. It has a different purpose in human life than conventional religion does. And obviously there's some overlap, but they're also kind of different things. So that's all by way of saying that I'm not really thrilled by this locution of lower nature. And there's a subtle judgmentalness in that, or maybe not so subtle, that there's something wrong with being human. And from my perspective, as I have come to understand the teaching that I've received, or perhaps misunderstood it, copper plea there, but as I understand it, as I've come to understand it, we are simultaneously in this human incarnation. We are simultaneously descended, not fallen, descended angels, and we are risen apes. And it's at that confluence that we live a human life, and that we live a fully human life. And the work is not to push away the animal nature, but to integrate it. And there's an alchemy that happens there, so that our empathy and our connection grows. And we come to experience, receive, become more and more deeply aware of our own inherent wholeness and integrity. We come to live more and more in and through that portion of our being which never fully incarnates, which is still the descended angel. And that acts as a kind of navigational fix. Like I've used the example before, where if I'm sailing a boat to Honolulu, I use an instrument called a sextant and take a navigational fix on the North Star. I'm not trying to sail my boat to the North Star, but I'm using it to navigate. It's a point of orientation. And when we have emptied ourselves of the wounds of childhood and enough of the social conditioning that we are truly ourselves and not what everybody else tried to put into us for their convenience, we naturally come upon that inherent integrity of ourselves, which is also the integrity of every other human being. And that's what informs every thought and action. And it simultaneously does not permit of the spitefulness and destructiveness that consume so many people. There's just no room for it. You don't even have to push it away at a certain point. It just simply doesn't enter. When the breath is kept in rhythm and is refined, the magnetism which is ordinarily consumed in the activities of mind and body is preserved. In whatever we do, and in all our thinking and imagining, we consume energy. This consumption of energy brings on old age and weakness. Contrariwise, it may be that meditation of itself may cure one's evils, whatever they may be, for all arise out of nafs, and meditation is the best means to control the nafs. So, nafs is a Sufi technical term. It's usually taken to mean the lower nature, but the literal translation of the word nafs means breath. And there is one of his discourses, which I can almost quote, where he says that in pre-eternity, the soul is created out of the first impression. And that impression turns back on itself and becomes a circling current of light and life. And that's the origin of the nafs, of the ego. And that's why the Sufis call breath and ego by the same term. So this is a very nuanced metaphysics. And at a certain point in one's development, the reason that ego and breath are the same becomes clear. And that simultaneously lifts all the judgment and all the condemnation off of this thing that he's calling lower nature. So the practices that we do, hopefully daily, have a cumulative effect in refining the breath, which is the same as regulating the nervous system. And little by little, if we're consistent, there's a very tiny but deep momentum that's built up. And at first, it's like accruing interest on a bank account of a couple of bucks. It takes a long time to begin accumulating much interest. But over time, it does accumulate and then it begins to compound. And then a certain point arrives where we're cashing it in every day. And part of the willpower that's needed is to not let ourselves get derailed by the day's emergency, but to budget the time, assert the willpower to go. The first thing I do in the morning after my feet hit the floor, I brush my teeth, maybe I make the coffee and sit down and I do the practices. I do this. There's some things that I don't even leave the house without doing. At the very least, it's the purification breaths. Hopefully, when I budget the time for it, which I really try to do, is some other breath practices. And then I'm ready to face the day because I've got all the dross of the night and the dream world and all of that stuff. I put that down. And I've tuned in on, okay, who am I today? What do I have to work with? What's floating around in the collective that I might need to be aware of or not partake of? And then, unless I've got something pressing, I'll do some of the wazifa, the dhikr practice, to go deeper, empty myself a little bit more, and to let myself be filled properly. When one does that, the magnetism which is ordinarily wasted or consumed is absorbed into one's personal atmosphere. This makes of one a battery of life. It is this battery which is used by teachers and healers and all mystics. It is the same energy which is mentioned in prayer Nayaz, that it comes to us through the rays of the sun and the waves of the air and the all-pervading power of space. In the prayer, he actually says all-pervading life in space. So it's really interesting that he uses this locution here. And yeah, as Sufis, we don't shy away from the use of power where appropriate and where it can be used skillfully. Abdul Qadir Jilani said very explicitly, and quoted by Inayat Khan, do not shrink from using power if you have it. Through breathing, which is conveyed on the air, enters the personality through the breath. By silence and by stilling the mind, one draws upon the endless resources of space. He's also talking, even though he doesn't say it here, he's also talking about how the divine names, the sifat, the divine qualities, inform us, create us. Move us. And this is happening all the time, or it wouldn't exist. We're not separate from the divine names. The only thing that stands in the way of awareness of how the names move through us, live us, and inform everything that we do is just our lack of awareness, our incognizance. This absorption is a veritable alchemy, and the knowledge of it is the secret of the adept. So that's enough verbiage. Let's go back to that zikr of Allah. Ooh. And just, even while concentrating on the movement and the words, notice if there's any sense in your being of a greater spaciousness, a greater lightness. There might or there might not be. And I will mention that occasionally when we're looking too hard or trying too hard, we just create more separation. So there's an art to this practice. Of being very masterful, but also holding it gently. If you squeeze it too much, all you'll be aware of is the squeezing. So there's this pendulation between control and surrender. And it sometimes takes a bit of doing to actually relearn how to allow that, how to allow mastery, as well as how to allow surrender. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Allah. 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 In breath. Allah. 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 Inhale Allah, exhale. Your own rhythm. Continue with the practice silently. Inhaling, thinking Allah. Exhaling, drawing Allah down into the heart. Gradually let the physical movement become smaller. And let the tempo of your breath become more natural. Continue the concentration of reaching into the vastness on the inhale and concretizing it into the body on the exhale. And when you're ready, on some next breath, switch to thinking who on the inhale and who on the exhale, in and out through the heart. And when you're ready, just relax all technique. And just notice what shifts or changes might have occurred in this practice. And just presence yourself to that.